He could not see the room. He never could. But he could read it with his ears, with his guitar, with the specific, extraordinary perception that the people who worked alongside him said was unlike anything they had ever encountered in a recording studio. The most amazingly perceptive man I ever met. That is what a guitarist who would go on to become one of the most celebrated in the history of rock music said about Clarence Carter in 1971. Not the most talented singer, not the most commercially successful artist, the most amazingly perceptive man. Clarence Carter, the blind Southern soul star who scored 2 top 10 hits with Slip Away and Patches, died on May 14, 2026, following a diagnosis of stage 4 prostate cancer and a battle with pneumonia and sepsis. He was 90 years old. And when the open casket service comes, when the family gathers in the church that will hold the man who grew up in Montgomery, Alabama, who attended the Alabama School for the Blind, who graduated from Alabama State University with a degree in music, and who then spent 60 years making some of the most emotionally honest recordings in the history of American soul, the room will hold something rare. The body of a man who never saw the world he moved through, and who understood it better than almost anyone who ever did. Born blind on January 14, 1936, in Montgomery, Alabama, Carter received his first guitar from his grandmother at the age of 9. A grandmother, a guitar, at 9 years old, and from that moment everything followed, not despite the blindness, alongside it, through it, with the specific, stubborn, completely unhurried confidence of someone who had decided that the thing he could not see would not determine what he could do. Carter graduated with a Bachelor of Science degree in music at Alabama State University, where he teamed with another blind student, Calvin Scott, recording under the name Clarence and Calvin, and serving as backup musicians for touring acts such as Otis Redding and John Lee Hooker. Backing up Otis Redding, backing up John Lee Hooker, before a single chart position, before a single hit record. A blind man from Montgomery playing guitar for 2 of the most important figures in American music, learning, watching with his ears, accumulating the specific knowledge that only proximity to greatness can provide. And then Fame Studios, Muscle Shoals, Alabama, the room where everything changed. In 1965, Carter and Scott traveled to Muscle Shoals, Alabama, where they cut several songs at Rick Hall's Fame Studios. One song earned the attention of Jerry Wexler, who released it on the Atlantic imprint Atco, though it too failed to chart. Not long after, Carter and Scott were involved in a car crash that left Scott severely injured. A dispute over medical bills led to the group's demise, with the two embarking on separate solo careers. A car crash, a friendship ended over money, a partnership dissolved, and Clarence Carter, alone now, starting over, went back to Fame Studios and did it himself. His self-penned Tell Daddy became his first R&B hit in 1967, and later inspired Etta James to record the answer song Tell Mama. He followed that breakthrough with a run of deeply soulful recordings that established him as one of the most distinctive voices to emerge from Muscle Shoals. And then came the songs that nobody who has ever heard them can unhear. Slip Away arrived in 1968 and peaked at number 6 on the charts. It was a yearning appeal to adultery that managed to excavate some genuine vulnerability buried deep within the sin. It was his first million seller. A song about having an affair, that became a million-selling record, because Clarence Carter did not sanitize his subject matter. He did not make the sin prettier than it was. He sang it from the inside with a tenderness and a longing that made you feel the specific human weight of wanting something you shouldn't have. And the audience recognized something in it, because that is what great soul music does. It finds the thing you were afraid to name, and it names it for you. Carter's biggest hit came in 1970 with his version of Patches, which was a UK number 2 hit and a US number 4. The record sold over 1 million copies and won the Grammy Award for Best R&B Song in 1971. Patches, The song about a boy who promises his dying father he will take care of the family. Simple, direct, devastating. 1 million copies sold in 2 months. A Grammy Award. The specific reach of a song that touches something so universal, the weight of a promise made at a deathbed, that it crosses every demographic, every geography, every generation. Clarence Carter would write all his arrangements in Braille, and then have them transcribed for the other musicians. In Braille, while the rest of the musicians in that Muscle Shoals studio were reading their sheet music, Clarence Carter was reading his with his fingers, processing the same information through a completely different channel, and arriving at something that the guitarist who played beside him called the work of the most amazingly perceptive man he had ever met. But wait, let me ask you something. Have you ever listened to a song without knowing anything about the person who made it, and felt, in the sound itself, the evidence of a life lived with extraordinary attention, where the voice told you more about the human being behind it than any biography ever could? That is Clarence Carter. Every recording is a document of perception, of a man who could not see the studio, the musicians, the mixing board, the chart positions, and who heard all of it more clearly than anyone else in the room. Rodney Hall, president of Fame Studios, confirmed the news of his death and wrote, "He was far more than an artist to us. He was family." Family? From the studio where he made his most important recordings. From the building in Muscle Shoals where he sat with a Braille arrangement and translated it for the musicians around him, and made something that sold 1 million copies in 2 months. Fame Studios lost a member of their family on May 14, and the American South, which produced him, which educated him at the Alabama School for the Blind, which gave him Otis Redding to back up and a grandmother to give him a guitar, lost one of its most honest voices. In the years after his major crossover success, Carter continued recording and touring, establishing his own label, CG Entertainment, in 1996. He built his own studio in the basement of his Atlanta home. He taught himself to program keyboards and work with computers, by feel, by ear, by the same stubborn, joyful, completely unhurried perception that had defined every chapter of his life since a grandmother handed him a guitar at 9 years old, and he decided the world was something to be learned rather than seen. As he told a magazine in 1986, 40 years before his death, "I think I got another top 10 record in me. With the right amount of exposure, I know I could have it." He was 50 years old when he said that, still believing, still reaching, still utterly certain that what he had to offer was worth hearing. That is the man in the casket. The viewing was held on Friday, May 8, at the C.W. Morris Funeral Home in Highland Park, Michigan, a private gathering for the family and community that loved him. The interment followed through Southern Michigan services. No staging, no platform, no microphone. Just the man who read music in Braille and sold 3 million records and backed up Otis Redding before anyone knew his name, finally at rest. Carter died following a battle with stage 4 prostate cancer, pneumonia, and sepsis. He fought 3 things at once, because that is what he always did. He never had the luxury of facing one obstacle at a time. Rest in peace, Clarence Carter. January 14, 1936, May 14, 2026. He could not see the room, but he heard every single thing in it. Thank you for watching.